week, and I had talked to him about maybe coming on every other week with us.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he may be joining us right now. Hang on a second. Let's see if he's there. Andrew Rivers, you in?
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, it sounds good this week.
Yeah, well, you give me time to set up, and look what happens.
Hi, you're all set up. Looks great.
Thank you.
So you're saying this was a setup like that guy falling down in Buffalo? Is that what you're saying?
That was a total setup.
Yeah.
We didn't
to
go
be
politics
fair-
for 24 minutes.
Sure.
Here we go.
Listen. I mean, you got to take into consideration, like, of course, Trump thinks that it's hard for a 75-year-old man to fall backwards. Trump is like 300 pounds and always leaning forward. So
Have you noticed
he
that?
can't fall backwards.
Yeah.
It's like he looks like a centaur that somebody cut the back end off of.
He does have
That's how
that.
he stands.
Yeah, he has that.
Yeah.
It's bad posture, actually.
It is. I read a thing about it's a dementia based cerebral effect
Sure.
that causes people to feel like they're leaning forward. But that's got to be.
And that's
bullshit. I
not
don't believe
spin.
it.
That's not
Yeah,
propaganda.
exactly. I bought every second, every crumb of that story.
Who wrote it?
I want to
Fauci?
believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Anything come from Fauci, I'm still putting credence to. So we're good there. You know.
Yeah, you
I
still
love
like
the
him?
Fauci.
Yeah,
I'm a Fauci.
I'm a Fauci man too. I'm a Fauci man.
Baby.
Yeah. Well, he says very little now, but he basically said we're still just getting started with this.
Yeah, he's
pandemic.
allowed to say very little now. Yeah.
Well, he can do what he wants.
There you go.
They can't really. I mean, what can they do to him? But anyway, Andrew. So, how's life for you in Tequila?
Well, people say comedy's important at times like this, but it feels more like I'm the band on the Titanic. But we got a good, stable genius in charge, so I think it's going to work out.
Yeah.
So, in other words, they say it's important, but there's not a lot of work yet, right?
Well, yeah. Well, clubs are starting to. I'm going to go to my first open mic night tonight and see if any of my new jokes are fun. And we're going to dip our toe back in before the second wave hits and see what happens.
There you go,
Yeah.
man.
The second wave. Well, so is everything open? Tell me what Seattle is like. I don't have any clue.
Yeah. There's been a protests every night for the last about a week and a half, and the Seattle Police Department put a ban on tear gas for 30 days, and then they used tear gas the very next day. So I think they had a supply chain issue, but Trump ordered a bunch of McDonald's to the White House. He was going to personally make sure that gas got back in place. But they've set up now, the police, they were sort of fighting over the police precinct on Capitol Hill, but now the police have left and everything's nonviolent, but they've set up an autonomous zone.
Right.
Where they're all just sort of living and they're showing movies and loving each other. And I thought I wanted to go check it out, but I didn't have my passport with me. I wasn't sure what the rules were. I didn't pay attention in social studies, so.
You didn't know if you could
and-
get
you
into
and many
Capitol Hill
others.
without a passport?
Right, yeah. I'm not sure what's going on. Because they've set up barriers and they say, like, no police or girls. And
I get where you're going with this.
Yeah.
It does sound nice that Seattle is basically leading the way for peacefulness. And I heard another city that you wouldn't expect to be peaceful, but Detroit had like 0 arrests. They had like 10 days of peaceful protest. And I was talking to a friend from Detroit, and I said, well, what happened to the core skills of tipping over cars and lighting them on fire that Detroit was so famous for? And he said they have an inspiring mayor right now who speaks to the people in a leadership sort of style and says, behave, let's make Detroit look good. And so they did, which I thought was like, unfortunately, they don't get a lot of Twitter retweets, or they don't get a lot of mention because. Well,
it's been hard to stay informed because they kept shooting news reporters, but it was very weird because it was a protest against police brutality. We were like, treat us all the same, and police were like, fine, we'll use excessive force on everybody. Like, that's
What
not
do
what
they
we
want,
meant.
Treat them equally.
wait a minute,
You're never
I was
happy.
kidding about the knee in my neck. No.
Yeah. But because what I did is I set up. I found like a YouTube video that was streaming like 10 different protests at once. It was like an NFL Red Zone thing, and because like social media. But I was watching social media at the same time to just to hear what you're. But it is hard because your social media is like a carefully curated news feed that. The only purpose they think is that it'll keep you on there longer, right? Because if all you do is get in arguments with Trump supporters, Facebook thinks you secretly like it. And
that's an interesting thing about artificial intelligence. So if you spend time being engaged negatively, you're
they don't know the
actually
difference.
You're not getting across the point that you're opposed to something. You're getting across the point that you're an easy mark to push your buttons and engage you in the social media platform.
Well, you'll be refed those you've engaged with. Even if you engage to call them on their BS, you still get refed their feeds.
Right. So
and you're not convincing anyone, which is crazy.
No one convinces anyone of anything.
I have today. Just
yeah.
Did you
today.
convince somebody of
I
something?
changed someone's mind on Facebook today. I swear to
About
God.
what? Were they buying a tire and you talked them into a different kind of tire?
No, actually, and it's funny. It's about prejudice, bigotry, civil rights, Black Lives Matter.
So someone thought those were good things and you talked them out of it?
And I told him that's all complete bullshit. No, sorry, Joe. No,
Well, hold on, and don't just
comment.
apologize to me. There's a guy who hasn't been able to listen to our last 4 podcasts because if we get an explicit rating, he can't download them. So every time we have a profanity, we lose listeners. Mike
That's
the
true,
Garbage Man.
and I've been trying to be more careful. I really have.
All right, he says. I know it's not the Bob, Spike, Joe, and Mike the Garbage Man show, and you
Who's
can
Mike
do
the
what
Garbage
you
Man,
want.
by the way?
I don't know. He says I've been listening.
I want to rename the show Adam and Steve after the Capitol Hill protests.
Okay, he says I don't want to interrupt your story, but I do want to. I want to define this right now. Are
Sure.
we going to swear or not? Because it says I've been listening for years, enjoyed the show. I even got a backstage pass once. He was Spike's Garbage Man,
Yeah.
and he says funny thing now I'm Pedro Luciano's Garbage Man.
Wow.
Anyway, I wanted to let you know that I have not been able to download the last 4 podcasts due to the explicit rating. We listen on Spotify and have the rating set because our kids use it as well.
So who sets the rating to explicit?
Well, I don't. Anytime somebody swears, it gets a warning. So even
Wait a minute.
little
Does
bitty
Apple,
yellow-
does Apple look through your podcast and pull out a word?
This is Spotify, and I don't know. But
How do
he
they
hasn't
know?
been able to download the last 4. How did they know that you're playing a Chuck Berry song from 1951 for 30 seconds? I mean, it's all AI. I guess it's in there. You know,
Big brother.
Yeah. So anyway, we have to decide, and if we're going to swear, it's.
Do you think they had these discussions at
audience.
HBO too? Like, we have to decide this Sopranos thing. Are we going to swear?
Well, they have similar discussions.
That darn mafia tonight on HBO.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what HBO just decided they're not going to do, but I don't want to interrupt, and I already did. But I do want to say, just swearing and apologizing to me it's not me, it's the world, and it's do you want to have a family show or not? This is a fundamental question.
Yeah.
And frankly, for me, I'm really not interested in doing a show that is not family because I'm a teacher, and that's what I believe. So,
Sure.
and I'm okay either way. But it is a fundamental problem that we're going to have to deal with.
So the last 4 shows he hasn't been able to download.
That's what he said. Yeah.
I would like to go through and point out that it's not me dropping F-bombs in the last 4 shows.
I know. They've been amazingly clean.
I don't think I dropped any either.
Exactly.
I know.
So I got to wonder what the barometer is for profanity or explicit. You know, is it too much?
Maybe
politicking?
we
Is it-
should experiment with borderline words. Like, what if we
We're back to shrimp.
Shrimp.
You know?
Yeah,
Sure.
I mean, we did
I
it
don't
for
give a fluff
25
either,
years
Bob,
without
you know?
swearing.
Yeah.
I don't see
We
why
did,
it
and-
would be
and I have
harder
made
not to.
I have made a conscious effort to not just be so cavalier with profanity.
Yeah.
And when I say Joe, I apologize. I mean it because I do it out of reverence and respect to you.
I know, and
which I share.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but this was
No.
a letter that we just got, so it's
I
obviously
read
an
it too.
issue.
I
If
read it
people
too, yeah.
can't access our show due to an explicit rating, I think we need to make a point to let people know we are not explicit, and you can listen with safety with your kids around. And that's just me. Now, that if you guys want to do it differently, that's fine. But that's the kind of show that we did for 25 years, and I think that's the kind of show people want to hear.
Well, we could debate this. In our 25 years, we were able to get away with all kinds of explicit stuff that wouldn't be accessible today on broadcast media. We talked about.
All right, now we're gonna watch and see if Spike can make Joe change his mind.
Yeah.
Not at all.
By the way,
Not at all.
Spike never finished that story, but that's okay.
We'll get there.
By the way,
And what-
Joe, I think your new trademark is to say, I don't want to get political. I don't want to interrupt. I don't want to yell fire in a crowded theater, but
Well,
it's cute.
I don't want to mess around. I only want to do a show that is real, that is from the heart. If
Yes.
this energy is too much, then I really, I think we all have it in us to do a great show, to do an entertaining show, and to do it with some energy. And if having energy, if talking about my students and all that is the problem, then that's just not the show for me, because that's what I do. Now, I will do my best to also be calm and funny, but we are 50 episodes in, 51 episodes
51,
in
actually,
today.
because you said
So now-
50 the other day.
Yes, this is number 51.
Sure.
So I think it's time to do, as we say in the education business, a little reflection
Sure.
and a little, maybe even shut it down for a month and think about what we want to do here.
Is that what you're talking about?
Well, I'm not talking. I'm just saying. I
It
mean,
sounds like it's summer and you just finished graduation and you're a
Where's my summer
Let's
off?
just take 3 months off
sounds
until we
like
can
you're
figure
realized-
out what
By the
else
way,
is going on.
a couple weeks ago, I was thinking about going hiking, and it was like, oh, with the pandemic now, I could go finish the long trail. It was part of the Appalachian Trail. I was doing a 275-mile hike, and then I got that Lyme stuff, and so I only did half of it. I did 140 of the 280 miles, and I thought, yeah, I could finish it this summer. And then it went, dude, you're recording podcasts 4 nights a week, and you're doing a Saturday show, so you can't really just disappear for a week. I was like, oh yeah, I don't get summers off.
but we used to take, I'm not talking the whole summer, but we used to take vacations. I
Sure.
think there's nothing wrong. The world, well, back when the world was normal, they would also
Yeah.
take vacations and tune out of media. But
Well,
I know it's not a normal
You
world
lobbying
right now.
for time off reminds me of the dear old Joe I've always loved, so that's fine. We could talk about it. We could take a break.
I'm lobbying for focusing on what do we want to be here? What do we want to do? And I
Yes.
think the audience is our focus group. I think they let us know what we want to be. And if I'm off base, bobspikeandjoe@gmail.com. I mean, let us know. Because I may be way off base. It's Joe and Mike the Garbage Man show is not very appealing either. So
I don't
it's,
know
you
what Mike the
this-
Garbage Man has to do with us.
He's the guy who says that due to any explicit rating, he can't listen. He's the guy who just mailed us and said that.
Plus, he's had to go through Spike's garbage for so long. He's already traumatized.
and now Pedro and
Some of the
Luciana's
best
garbage.
things in his house came out of my garbage can. Let's just say that.
So here's the thing. I am no longer a teenager, so I don't know if I want to do a show where I can't speak freely. I'm not a dirty person, and I certainly don't use expletives crazy, but I would say at our age, most of the stuff we watch is not the old FCC on the radio business. I also would say these days, kids, if you want to keep kids away from dirty stuff, shut down their internet. Defund the internet. Turn it off. Because anybody could get anything they want on the internet, right?
Yeah, there's
Sorry,
no
I didn't
question.
hear you. I
There's
was watching
dirty
porn while
stuff.
you were talking. Sorry.
What's
That's fine. There's no question in that
Yeah.
people swear. And
I
there's
mean, we're
dirty
nothing.
Stuff.
We're not even a flea on the butthole of what was the word? Profanity.
Right. Well, I kind of made a point not to use profanity on or off the air early in my lifetime, and it's just something that and my kids will tell you I'm tolerate anything, but I don't tolerate any talk like that anywhere in my classroom or anywhere close to a
Well, of
microphone.
course, it's not appropriate in a classroom.
Right. And I don't know if it's appropriate for a show that I'm participating in because I'm a teacher. And I'm just as much as I don't want to hear my kids swearing, I really don't want to hear you guys swearing. But at the same time, it's your show more so than even mine.
But I think
that's-
we're not swearing. I think we talk like real people talk. I think that an occasional profanity is a part of normal adult conversation.
I see Andrew do comedy. I very rarely will hear a profanity. Usually he'll put one on kind of like an encore at the end of his set, like just one, kind of like a rim shot. You know,
I think you're right. I think we're very similar. I raised him.
So, well, it's just something to think about, and I totally interrupted, and I'm sorry, but that's.
So, what did you talk, Spike? Why don't you talk Joe into swearing for us?
I don't think so. No, I chose.
What did you talk someone out of?
I'll tell you when I swear,
No.
and then I'm going to let you finish. The time I swear is when I'm surprised, when I'm rudely surprised. And you guys probably remember the only time I swore on the air, and you yelled at me for doing it too.
Did I?
Do you remember that? Yeah,
I don't remember ever yelling at anybody.
I swore on the air once in my whole life.
I was always so sweet.
Well,
Such
you
a
didn't
great-
yell and scream, but
Yeah.
you were not happy with me for doing it.
What'd you swear
'Cause
about?
we were in the middle. We were in the middle of, I think, a pretty good moment, and I totally, just like I did now, interrupted you. It was the old KISW building on Aurora, and they moved out, but they didn't move us out. So we basically broadcasted in an abandoned building for
a while. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, like a couple of months or so. It didn't stay abandoned for long. Once you get an abandoned building on Aurora, word gets out, and we started having some critters in there. And a mouse ran across my foot, and we were live on the air, and I see this mouse go jumping over my foot, and I said, "Oh." And, live on the air, and you're like, what did you just say? You hit the button, and then you got a little mad. I said, I'm sorry, a mouse just ran over my foot. And
Yeah.
you said, it's a mouse, get over
And
it.
then we were fired, and that was the end of our career.
No, we got a promotion. That was was when we moved to the
Yeah.
but that's the only time I swore on the air.
So to answer your question, Joe, I think we're a very wholesome show, with or without an occasional profane word. And I'm no longer on a radio station where and by the way, anyone who's listening to this, listening by choice, choosing it on the internet. So I don't know if I want to be censored. If that's a deal breaker for you, I'm hardly ever going to swear, but I don't want to live by some rules. I certainly don't want to live by, to me, it's freedom of speech. We get to say whatever we want to say.
Exactly. So if you want to do that, you can do it, and I will do it too. But I won't do it on a platform where if it's gonna be a regular thing. If I don't ever want to have to apologize for anything I do in my real job and my real career.
Well, I respect that. Yeah. I don't think you should.
And I don't want to be on a show that comes with an explicit warning label. So if it's not getting through Spotify, if it's not getting through Apple because it's too explicit, then that's really
you
not
have
a
to
show
think
I
about
can
that.
be on.
I'll respect whatever you decide, but I don't think there's anything explicit about our show. I don't think it's ever been explicit. It was more explicit on the radio than it is now. We used to talk about sex. We used to talk about all kinds of really, all kinds of edgy things on the public broadcast.
I know, and
We did a nude broadcast every year for a bunch of years.
I know, and it was, and I remember how that started and stopped. I think I already told those stories, but we needed to do that to get attention, and we got our attention, and then we kept doing it, and we quit getting attention, and what we got was listeners leaving because they didn't want to hear a family
I didn't
show
do it
of
for
people doing
attention.
that.
I thought it would be I thought it would be cool to be free and open, and I thought it would actually be fun to see some nudity. I'll be honest, but as it turns out, the nudity was a complete. I don't want to say it was a letdown, but it was a non-issue. It's like once you hang out in a park with people nude for, I don't know, first, like the thing I always like to say about it is we got there was, wow, everybody's going to get naked. And then everybody was naked. And after about 10 minutes, it was like, no big deal. And the only time that it felt just a little bit sensual was at the end of the nude broadcast. People started putting on their underwear. And I went, oh, I shouldn't be watching people put on their underwear. In other words, total nudity.
But you did.
Total nudity.
And we were never invited back.
Was how God designed us. And once you're nude for a little while, you're like, well, this is silly, the infatuation that human beings have with clothes. But then, someone starts popping on a bra and some panties, and I'm like, oh, I got to look away. And that was like, and that stuck with me to this day about how Puritan, how silly our society is about making certain things out to be bad that aren't bad, and maybe not making stuff out to be bad that is bad, like really not liking each other and treating each other bad. But anyway, that's what Newtstock was to me. I thought it was very cool. And I do like the idea of exploring difficult topics, because easy topics are kind of boring. Like politics is mostly boring. There's one side, there's another side, and unless you agree with one side or the other side, nobody likes you.
Until today. When I changed a man's mind on Facebook.
All right, so you changed
Yes,
a man's
let's get
mind,
back.
right?
I'm sorry, I derailed you for 20 minutes.
And I got derailed by Joe.
That was a major league rejoiner. Come on, boys.
So
Let's
you
give credit
changed
where
a
credit's
man's
due.
mind? How did you change his mind?
So somebody posted this post, and I've seen these by hundreds of people. I very rarely engage with these people.
Right.
I find that, like Andrew said, I get too many of them rolled back into my feed if I do. But somebody wrote a post. It's about why is it that Colin Kaepernick is able to. Why is it that Colin Kaepernick is able to express his opinion, but Drew Brees and Tim Tebow are not?
Oh, I like that one. That's a good false equivalency, which
It's a
another
complete
listener wrote
false
about.
equivalency.
So go ahead.
So I wrote, well, it's funny that you mentioned they weren't allowed to express their points of view, but you know full well what their points of view were. How is that even possible?
That's good.
In
In other words,
the
they
guy
both
wrote
were
back-
allowed to express their points of view, but they were both
Exactly.
ridiculed by the other side. Brilliant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we started getting back and forth into it, and this guy wrote, oh, we got to respect everybody's feelings. If we all felt the same thing, it'd be North Korea, blah, 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 And I we should be intelligent enough to agree to disagree. And I responded with, what I think you might be missing here is that Drew Brees expressed his opinion, saw how it affected his teammates and his ability to lead his team,
And he
which
grew
is
and
the job he's
learned.
paid to do.
Yeah.
And he grew and learned from this.
Awesome.
And the guy wrote back, hey, that's a good perspective, blah, blah, blah. It's Brees. I wrote, Brees is free to express his opinions, but freedom of speech isn't from freedom of consequence.
That's
And
right.
when you say something you truly believe and you lose the respect of your teammates, you're hurting the team's cause. And Brees saw that, and he apologized for what he had said. And the guy came back with a different perspective, so it worked.
Interesting.
He's still going to vote Trump, but what the hell?
Well, as are probably at least 40% of the people, but it's fascinating, and I think the conversation, even what Joe's talking about, I think the conversation we're having about what constitutes good and bad treatment of each other, I think that's a hugely important conversation. But I think we have to get away from the stereotypes that a bad word is a bad word. No, like being really mean and having mean intent to somebody, that's bad.
I agree, and don't get me wrong. I just don't like profanity. I don't think it means you're being cruel to anybody. I just think it's. I don't really want to do a show with it, but I think being kind to each other is the most important story that needs to be told right now. And it's funny, like Spike was talking about on Facebook. Now it was the Me Too movement for people who were cheaters. Now it's racists that are being called out, and people are putting other
Yes.
people's profiles up there, going, "This guy is a racist," and it's. I'm glad I was never a cheater or a racist. So I've avoided both of those. There's plenty of other things I've probably done, but it's kind of weird when you start, what is it called, the Scarlet Letter or whatever, when
Yeah.
you start putting individuals out there and saying,
So
this
I-
guy's thinking wrong.
I have a fairly odd view on racism, as we touched on it a little bit last time, and my view isn't fully fleshed out, and it's certainly not a religion that I think anybody else should ascribe to, but I do believe a lot of racism is in our DNA, that it's tribal, and I also agree with Spike that a lot of it is nurture and a lot of it is bad upbringing. But I happen to think that, and I'll tell you why I think this. I don't have any proof, but why I think this is, I've really enjoyed studying history throughout my life, going through all of the different media events and riots and protests and 4 dead in Ohio when I was a high school student, and then watching OJ and watching Clinton and watching all of these. We shift from crisis, from crisis to crisis, and yet the stories are almost always the same. That there are always these bad people. We label them as bad people. That there are always people with bad ideas, and they're aggressive ideas. They're about winning. They're about cheating. They're about taking someone from something. Like Lisa and I are watching the Jeffrey Epstein show on Netflix. Have you seen any of that?
No, but I know
a little bit of it.
He's the back to the Me Too. He was kind of the king of that, right?
He was the king of Me
worst
Too,
the
and
worst.
everyone was like Me Too, and he was like, "Okay, I'm checking out." I think, I believe he was. I almost never like conspiracy theories, but boy, if there was one conspiracy theory I was going to go with, it would be that Epstein was taken out. I just can't decide who took him out, whether it was Clinton, Trump, or Prince Andrew. It was one of those three.
It looks like an MI6 job to me, Bob.
Yeah.
I'm going with Prince Andrew.
Andrew, that's a joke for your perusal if you have any interest.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, I'll write that one down.
He never takes a joke from me.
It's tough,
What's that?
Well, the truth doesn't get enough clicks, Like
That's
even
true.
reasonable discussion doesn't get clicks. Like
You're right.
the TV show Cops never showed anybody getting off with a warning. You know what I mean?
Right. Now, did they show the neck? Did they show the chokeholds and the neck things on Cops? Are they going to have to redo Cops?
yeah. No,
Oh, they're done with
Cops
Cops.
got canceled.
Cops got
Today.
canceled.
They pulled the
Yeah.
plug after
Wow.
31 years. No more cops.
Oh wow! Did you hear
finally
about
cleaned up
Bugs Bunny
Lakewood.
too? Did you hear they changed Bugs Bunny?
Oh, they
Elmer
changed
Fudd.
Elmer Fudd. Yeah.
no longer holding. And Yosemite Sam both lost their fire.
Elmer Fudd. They said, and this was ridiculous. They said Elmer Fudd could no longer come at Bugs Bunny with a gun, but that he would use more cartoony violence things, a la the Roadrunner and like dynamite and things.
Hunting with an anvil.
And they showed him with a scythe, like one of those sickles. And I'm like, if you've ever seen a horror movie, that's bloodier than a gun.
That's horrible.
You
man.
hack off a rabbit's head with that, and it's gonna be red everywhere. It's just terrible.
I had to watch it, and it was so funny because Elmer Fudd can't carry a gun, but Bugs Bunny can light a stick of dynamite and shove it in Elmer Fudd's mouth and blow his head off. I mean, but I think the reason is, no kid is going to go down to Walmart and say, I want to buy one of them sticks of dynamite. No kid is going to go and say, I need one of those guillotine things. But a kid can go in and say, I could use a gun, and you can go and buy one. So I think taking guns, once again, maybe I'm going.
You can also
overboard.
go to the paint store and paint a train bridge, and then
Have him run into a solid wall.
But what I'm saying, and maybe it is me. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm oversensitive. But it's the same kind of with the profanity. I think the less guns that people see, the less guns kids see, the less they're going to want to have one. And I think that's a good thing. So,
And
well, here, hold on. Let me throw a libtard curveball at you.
okay.
Because I think there's no way in HE double hockey sticks that it's a good idea to take a hunting
We're going to
gun
have to
out of
have a
hunter's
game where
hand.
we try to love Joe by not swearing, but we're going to have to.
No, Joe's right. I don't want.
My wife
our
has
podcast
got
to
some
be-
plants started outside. Pussy willows. She's put
Oh,
in
they're
the water.
beautiful.
We're
They're
going
so
to try
fuzzy
and
and
root.
soft.
Okay, go ahead.
I never want our podcast kept from anybody's hands because I dropped an F-bomb. I don't want to be the reason somebody can't hear what we have to say. But there's no way that Elmer Fudd should have a gun. Yosemite Sam, no.
Yes,
He
I
was
agree.
an outlaw. I get that.
These are the
But Elmer
things that
Fudd's a
make Spike
hunter.
sound Republican, by the way. I like that.
just show Bugs Bunny getting a background check and waiting 7 days. It's very simple.
I love it.
and I do feel bad. I mean, even a big club or something is pretty bad. I mean, you're still going to have some.
He's a
they're not going
hunter.
to sit down and they're not going to sit down and play chess or something to settle the difference.
He's a hunter, and that's a rabbit. I think we're really overdone. it.
Come on.
We always go too far. That's like
Season.
defund the police. I mean, even Bernie Sanders came out today and said, actually, the police need more resources. You can
Well, hold on.
train the
But
police.
Let's not jump down this rabbit hole. But watch John Oliver's show last week.
Uh-huh.
No matter how you feel about the police department,
I
watch
love John
Oliver's
Oliver,
show
so
last
I'll
week.
like whatever he says. I won't agree with it necessarily.
He defined what defunding the police means.
Oh, you mean it
14%,
means something
14%.
different for every single person who hears it?
Well, what it should mean, and this is another
Make
way
America
liberals
great
just-
again.
Yes.
This is how liberals screw the pooch, and I hope that's clean enough for our censors.
Yeah.
Okay. Terms like defund the police, that is just a
You
weapon.
should say
for,
Phillips head
for-
screw so that the algorithm has no doubt that you are speaking of hardware.
There you go. That's the stupidest way to phrase this. And Oliver said, police,
Yeah.
14% of what police respond to are like the big crimes, murder, theft, auto theft, assault. We know 14%. The rest of them are all domestic violence, mental health issues, homelessness, things like that. If the police were tasked to do what police are needed to do, and those resources were allotted elsewhere to community service, things that have been stripped out of every budget, then you could refund the police department and do it right. Make police go where they're needed, and put the services that are needed elsewhere that are being attended to by police.
There are some cities.
Oliver said it so much better.
Yeah, he's brilliant. There are some cities that are redoing the whole thing now, and it's been done before. Other cities have shut down and rejiggered their police departments, so it's good. It's like Me Too.
Yeah, and what we need there is we need to go back to, Andy and Barney. We need to go back to police that policed by getting to know their towns and getting to know their people. You never needed to have any kind of automatic weapon to bring Otis the drunk in and put him in jail. I mean, he was just going to walk in there with you because you knew Otis. The way the police and I'm not one that says, the police are out of hand. We got to, I believe you, Bob. I think this whole you're either on the side of Black Lives Matter or the police is. I don't go for that.
It's crazy. But that's, by the way, that's the divisive nature of the algorithms that run the propaganda that we all live in,
Right.
and we're all pushed to choose one side or the other. So when
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm jumping the
please.
gun.
I don't mean to interrupt you when you're interrupting me. So go ahead.
Well, it's not. Well,
I was talking.
It's not propaganda. It's a fact that the police are killing people with their tactics, and it needs to change. But the people don't remember how the police got to be. They weren't always carrying big weapons and riot gear and everything as much as they are now. And I don't know if you remember when this happened, but it was after 9/11. There was tons of funds that went to the police because we thought we were going to have to fight a war on terror domestically. So the police got militarized, basically. And then there was the war on drugs. So it's like the drug gangs. We've got to have the automatic weapons that they do.
Do you
And so
notice that our government and our politics always keep us at war with something? There's always a war on something.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And that's so defunding, or at least de-escalating the amount of just guns, doing more talking and less shooting and strangling is not a bad thing.
I love that.
No
Less
question
shooting and
about that.
strangling.
Yes.
Put that on a hat instead of
I think everybody can agree with that one.
Blue
But
Lives
I
Matter.
do think also you need some police. I mean, you've got to have some. But do you need to have them in schools? I mean, is there? We have a resource officer at our school. Great guy.
They
by
call
the
him a
way.
resource officer.
Resource officer. Yes, he's a guy.
So
that,
if I ask him what the capital of Burma is, he ought to be able to answer that question if he's standing in front of the library. I'm using you as a resource.
If you don't have enough pencils, yeah. If you don't have enough
Actually-
pencils, he's got.
What
Could you fix the
when was
copy
Magna
machine,
Carta written,
please?
officer?
Yeah.
and the capital of Burma doesn't exist now because it's Myanmar, and
I
I
know.
can tell you all about that.
Every time I try to do a geography joke, the first thing that comes out of my mouth
Right.
is something from 30 years ago, and it doesn't work.
Well, ironically, my student Mohammed's from there, and he just published a book this week on Amazon.
Of course he did.
If you want to learn about police brutality, boy, the Myanmar people, they got what Mohammed has been through as part of the Rohingya people is nothing compared to what we're going through here in America.
Yeah.
And His book is on Amazon, and he'd love for you to buy a copy. And it's very short. It's only about 30 pages. It's called Myanmar Youth Grows Up or something. But but Burma and Myanmar is makes us look pretty bad.
Okay, so let's start to wind it down, guys. We're coming up on the hour. Andrew, is there anything that we didn't get to with you?
I mean, you can spin the wheel again if you want. There's only so many things to talk about, but I think instead of police, we just have a small group of people that are like from the community. That way, they're invested. They go around and they offer businesses, protection.
Right.
Yeah. So you go to tax, you get a small tax or whatever, and these guys rough up anybody. And we call them like good fellas, because they're the good guys.
They are
the
good
good
fellas
guys instead of police.
Yeah.
You make
or
a little
like an
tribute once a
acronym,
week.
like men after the financial independence of America.
The mafia.
Yeah,
for short.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
The MAFIA.
They
Good
can't be
job.
corrupted.
Yes.
They won't be involved
Any more
in
than they are.
politics.
However,
And
Any more than they are.
100% not racist, So
Yeah.
however,
always-
it'll mess with our explicit rating, unfortunately.
Yeah. But it's always
That's one
good
of the most obscene shows I've ever watched.
Really good restaurants, though, and when in those times they have great restaurants. That's where they're always meeting, is in those back rooms.
Absolutely.
Those wops know how to cook. Oh, I'm sorry. Was that out of line?
All right. So quickly, we have a few more Patreon people to say thank you to. Let me see if I can quickly pull up their names, because we do like to mention everybody who does sign up to toss something into the kitty. John Ropella. He sent us a message, too. What did John say? He just signed up today, by the way, this afternoon, which I think is really cool. Welcome back. We've been listening to your podcast since the beginning. Use the CastBox app. Unlike many of your listeners that expect your podcast to be a clone of your radio show, we appreciate the organic growth and the ebb and flow of the show. This show was a good example of it. Everybody got to talk about, even, Joe talked about what was bugging him. And we all we're figuring out how not to work for a giant corporation. He says, if an expletive slips in now and again, so what? Whoever said cursing isn't an effective way of expression. And if you're going to continue to focus on current events, it's going to be difficult to avoid politics. So let's hear it. We love your banter. Good to hear you again. This is a paying customer, Joe. Was your profanity complainer, did he pay?
I don't know. Mike, the garbage man, is he on there?
I think I haven't seen him, but I think that we have a bidding war here.
And I don't want to be all Puritan or anything, and I don't want to stifle anybody's free speech. I'm just talking, one, from a financial standpoint, and two, from what I can put my name on as a public.
Absolutely. Well, that's up to you, and you let us know how we're doing. Ann Bowling just became, she's a high-end, she's a Stable Genius contributor. Thank you so much. Wendy Finello signed up yesterday. Wendy, thank you very much. Don Reuter on Monday, what did he say? Keep recruiting Pedro. We'd love to have Pedro back on your show. Then you'll have drums, keyboard, vocals, and cowbell. You could make music again. Wow.
I didn't think about that.
That's interesting. Thank you, Don. Let's see, who else? Mark and Jennifer. I haven't even looked, but we're adding up some actual people on Patreon. Thank you. Mark and Jennifer Edwards became patrons. No, they didn't write a letter or anything. That's okay. John Rabideau, last Friday. I'm in. Keep reeling, guys. You crazy kids and your barnyard production might just take off. The ceiling's the limit, he says. I like that. It's not the sky, that's for sure. All right. I'm not going to go back further than that, but thank you all. You can just search for our show on Patreon or click on one of the links on one of our websites.
And one last minute update that just came over 30 minutes ago while we were doing this.
Okay.
We get our media statistics, and yes, this is episode number 51, and we have now had 100,143 people take time to listen to at least an episode. So
100,000 people.
Yeah,
That's very
we hit
nice.
the
Well,
100,000
100,000 listens. Mostly my cousin.
Could be.
Kept listening
They
over
could
and
be.
over again.
Either way, it's I'm a numbers guy. I like, it's a milestone. when
It's
you've got
impressive
100,000.
numbers. I think it's something to be proud of and really to be grateful for. Thank you all for listening. Lastly, this guy did write a nice long email to me and about you, Joe, too. He says, I'll skip the part about you because we've gone over that enough, but he said, I agree that demonizing 40% of our country is not the way to unify us. I think we all need to be signing up to be braver angels. What's braver angels? Do you know that one?
I don't know that one.
He says it's a wonderful nonprofit focused on depolarizing America. And then he sent the link, braverangels.com. I'm looking at their website. There's actually a picture of...
It's where you clean up your grandma's news feed on Facebook, so it just doesn't.
No, there's a picture of Abraham
It's
Lincoln.
the old going to the nursing home thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Anyway, it's Abraham Lincoln, a time of crisis, a call to courage. Be braver online. Don't be fighting so much. Wow, I love that. Thank you.
It's got the red and the blue. It's got a cool
Yep.
logo.
So he says, if I could get political, the opposite of I don't want to get political, but they both have the same follow-up. Bob, I'd like you to answer a couple of questions in a sincere manner.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to have to put on my sincere hat. I'll do my best. Okay. Do you honestly believe, well, all politicians lie? Which is a classic example of a false equivalency. Well, all politicians lie, so Trump is just as moral and upstanding as someone like Barack Obama or John McCain. If you don't, do you ever call your conservative friends out on this ridiculous, terribly toxic statement and way of thinking? So, okay. Honest answer. Oh, boy, do I call out my conservative friends. They all think I'm a total liberal, and then when I'm on with Joe, I act like a conservative. Why do I do that? Because I got to answer your question. I don't believe all politicians lie. I believe all human beings lie. And the worst lies are the ones we tell ourselves to make us think we know what's going on. So, will all politicians lie when used to get Trump off the hook is false equivalency. I completely agree with you. But I don't think it's wrong to say, hey, look, John McCain was, pretty into war. So was kind of Barack Obama in a way. And when I say there was a health crisis during the Obama administration that killed 400,000 Americans and no one really cared, it's not a false equivalency. It was a health crisis. It could have, should have been prevented. It was done for money, like so many things. It wasn't like the coronavirus, so it's it's not equivalent. But it's fascinating what we care about, and it has to be popular. Like Me Too didn't come around just because that was when we first started to figure out that sexual assault was bad. It just happened to happen. And, this terrible Floyd tragedy, why did it happen? I think because of an amazing cell phone movie and the timing of a lot of pent-up anxiety and maybe even a little leftover guilt about the NFL, Colin Kaepernick being out of a job. Has anybody hired him yet, Joe?
No.
Not yet.
Sorry,
but
Joe.
the NFL did, say, yeah, he's right. You can protest your own way you want. We were wrong about that. So
Yeah, that was really amazing, by the way, especially coming from the NFL.
Nobody's playing any football now, but Pete Carroll and the Seahawks did come out, and they were the one of the only teams that were allowing their players to
Right.
show any concern and make any kind of statement on the field before. So I wouldn't be surprised if we needed somebody that he could wind up here. What do you think, Spike? Have you heard anything?
I find it ironic that the NFL says it's okay for Colin Kaepernick to do that when there's no plan for a game to be played anytime
Right.
soon. I don't want that irony to be lost on anybody.
It is convenient timing on their behalf.
Yeah, convenient timing.
I do think.
I don't think.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think he's got this. I was never a big fan of his. He's a little too undisciplined for me. He could never evolve into a pocket passer with the kind of other physical attributes that made him a complete game breaker for any team, but he never had the mental acuity, I thought, to become the pocket passer he would need to be at certain moments.
Or he would have
Russell
protected
has
his
had that
own
ability to
paycheck
do
better.
that.
You got
Right,
to
but
protect
shouldn't
yourself.
And when I say he shouldn't be on any NFL roster, and I genuinely believe he should not be on any NFL roster.
Really?
And the reason I think that is because, and it's through no fault of his own, but he will create a media circus. He will create a media circus on any
no.
team that
The
gives
media
him a
will
chance.
create its own circus. I don't think you
Well,
blame
be
the
that as
person
it-
who.
well,
I
no.
can't believe you.
Hold on, let me finish then. You're right.
Hold on. Are you taking off your lib leotards?
He will be the match that lights the media circus fuse.
So what?
And that'll create a distraction. And
we need
Joe
more
can tell you,
distractions. Okay.
The difference between winning everything and losing in the NFL is so razor thin.
Yeah. All right. I hear you.
Any distraction can be enough to make you not win a championship.
All right.
Any distraction.
But if it stopped
And through
racism,
no-
I think it'd be worth
Yeah.
it. Okay.
yeah.
One other thing, though, may I get this joke out quickly before the time passes? I think that you say so far there's no game scheduled. I think that if they play games this fall, there will be so much kneeling they'll have to pass out communion. Sorry.
That is good. That is very good. That was worth squeezing her in
I'm
there.
trying to
That
keep
was
them
worth it.
politically G for you.
Yeah, and I agree. I don't like Colin Kaepernick. I'm prejudiced, and I'll use the worst word as hell against Colin Kaepernick. Nothing to do with his color or his political views. He's a 49er, or at least he was.
Okay.
I was trained to not like him, so I would have a hard time coming around to liking him. But I could see. I don't think you're going to see him playing in a I don't know what city. I think like a Seattle or a Detroit or somewhere like that would probably go better. New York, you can't create a media circus in New York. I mean, I think he could play
We'll
there.
see.
So.
We'll see what
That's
happens, and I hope for you guys that there's some NFL. That would be really
too.
nice. And I love how you guys are not racist, but city bigotry is alive and well. We hate San Francisco.
You
we
bet.
hate it.
We're
Hate Sydney.
divided on that. I love the town. I just don't like the 49ers.
So, next question that this guy Bernard asked, he said, "Do you honestly believe that a president's leadership really doesn't matter?" He heard me say something about there's not that much difference between presidents. I do believe that. I believe all presidents are Republican. I actually think Obama was a pretty good Republican president by most of his policies. And in fact, Obamacare was a fantastic Republican health care that was created by Mitt Romney for Massachusetts, and it did very well. I think that there's very little difference between them. Now, Trump's a whole other thing. He's not just a president, he's a reality television sideshow. But I think while he's president, that the Republicans just do Republican-y things. I don't think anything that horrific has happened. Like, the most horrific things have been the things he's said. And this guy says, well, then, what does he say? He goes on to say, he talks about some other stuff. But here's the thing. I think Trump is bad, but not because he's president, but because he sets a bad example, just like Joe was talking about not being profane. He sets a bad example of how people should treat each other. Plain and simple, without even the politics. That's what I don't like about him.
And I think the Republicans, I'm not going to get into it, but even they are, and I said this last week, check back in a week. Every week there's less people supporting our president.
Yeah, if you actually look at it over a long period of time, the numbers have not moved around all that much, and he could still come back. But at the moment, sure. At the moment, our horse is ahead by a schnoz.
Well, I'm not looking at numbers. I'm looking at people. And this guy can't even vote, but he lost a pretty serious endorsement this week. Did you hear? The Pope said, I don't want to get political, but that guy.
The Pope stole your line, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, the Pope has never concerned himself with American politics before, but even he has to point out that, it might be best, to move on.
Well, the
from
Pope
that.
would endorse defunding the police and bringing back the mafia, too, but he'd have to do it on the it would be a backroom deal. Okay, so anyway, this guy, by the way, great email, Bernard Seeger. Thank you. And Bernard says, do you think deficits don't matter? So trillions. So he starts talking about the deficit. The Republicans passed this big deficit bill. And I got to tell him something, because I was really concerned about this when, as soon as the coronavirus hit, I went, wow, those darn conservatives are going to become socialists overnight because it's an election year and they got to give everybody money. And even Joe pointed out they gave the poorest people who will probably vote for them extra $600 just to make sure that, you know what I mean?
A week.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And-
over $100 a day. I mean, that's a lot of money.
And articles were published that said, this is the worst deficit spending of all time. Have Republicans completely forgotten that they hate deficits? And the answer is they hate deficits when Democrats run them. Run
Not
is on each
Republicans.
as well. But
I had plenty of that money went to the rich people too. So
yes,
you
of
know,
course.
I don't-
They took
Yeah,
care of the
they're
rich,
equal.
and they
Yeah.
took
Oh, you
care of
bet.
their, they took care of like
Yeah, they
contractors.
did kind of the minimum. I mean, there's some states that still don't. It's varying state to state. Like I have friends that are comedians in Nevada that haven't been able to get unemployment. So
Yeah.
you
Oh
know.
yeah. So anyway,
I just-
this guy asks me about the deficits, and so what I did when I don't know, and I don't know, it's like I keep hearing that deficits are bad, but our country always runs up as much credit as it wants, and it never seems to have to pay it back. So I invited a guest to be on with me, and I did a solo podcast with Sean Alexander, who took banking and finance before he got into law. And he uses a word about United States currency. He calls it a fiat currency. Do you know what fiat currency means?
Fix it again, Tony.
Very good. So when we stopped having a gold standard, we used to have gold in Fort Knox. Every dollar was backed by gold.
Sure.
And Nixon got rid of that, and we basically said, we're just going to print money. So it's a dirty little secret because Congress and everybody argues about what we can and can't afford. But our government can print as much money as it wants. It really can. And then they sell debt, but what they do is they sell bonds. They sell our, backed by the good faith of the American currency all over the world, and they sell those with a little bit of interest to them, and China holds a lot of that. But anybody would, because we're one of the more stable, up until recently, countries that there's ever been. So I was shocked to hear my friends say, yeah, they'll hem and haw about it, but they can print as many trillions as they want. No one's going to, if there's inflation, it'll be inflation for other reasons, but don't tell anybody when politicians start arguing about deficits again, but they own the printing press.
And speaking of dirty, they'll probably quit printing soon and just start throwing a few zeros out there virtually, because who's actually pushing money around these days? I haven't had any much money in my wallet now in months. I don't want to touch things other people have touched. I don't want to be passing bills. So
Yeah.
I think it'll be the same thing, but I don't even think they're going to have to bother to print. They're just going to agree, all right, let's throw $1 trillion into that.
But I mean, they
computer
still
and-
call it $1 when it direct deposits.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
For
We
sure.
got ours, let's see, we got a check, but then we got a letter that had Donald Trump's name on it. I thought it was going to be his signature, but it
I got
wasn't.
that letter too.
Yeah.
We all got that letter.
It just had his name. It's like, whatever, you know. It's,
Love the auto pen.
It's an interesting time. Anyway, thank you to that listener who was very thoughtful, and he actually seems to listen carefully, Bernard. I hope something in the show is useful to all you guys. Love you guys. Thank you very much for being here. And my son too. You're not bad.
Yeah,
Oh, all
sure.
right.
Thank you, Andrew.
All right. Any last words? Someone gets the last word. Who wants it?
I would like to say to Looney Tunes, if you're gonna take Elmer Fudd's gun, make Porky Pig put pants on. Let's just at least have a level playing field. Okay,
That's good.
come on, man.
Awesome.
Bob, Spike, and Joe.